Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. The PS5 reveal event has just concluded. We have so many games, we've got new hardware, we've got just so much to go through. I wanted to do a full recap of everything, but there was so much in there, I don't know if we can. So I'm going to try and go through as much of it as I can and kind of just give my opinions on it. And yeah, we can have a discussion. Let's dive straight into it. Alright, so I've taken some notes here, but what I want to do in this video is just go through everything from the PS5 reveal event. As you guys know, the reveal event happened today, showing off, or our first look really, at the PS5 and PS5 games. We didn't know what we were going to be getting. My thoughts were we were going to go into it and we were going to see maybe half a dozen first-party PS5 titles and maybe some big ones like Call of Duty. I was kind of half right and half wrong. We didn't see Call of Duty, spoiler alert. But we did see a ton of first-party PS5 games as well as some second-party PS5 games and the console itself, which I definitely wasn't expecting. So that was a big shock. There was a ton included in this trailer, in this whole conference. It was way more than I expected there to be. It's still really early here in Australia. I think it's like just after 7 a.m. now. Let's just go through everything and we can kind of talk about it. Maybe I'll talk about my predictions and stuff as I go through, perhaps. But we started off with the Grand Theft Auto 5 tease. It was just GTA 5 coming to PS5, which I guess is not really a shocker. That was probably I thought it was going to be Fortnite. Obviously, they leaned into Grand Theft Auto 5 being that kind of mainstream title. And it's going to be free with PlayStation Plus for PS5 users, which is kind of cool. They showed off a trailer for a new Spider-Man game called Miles Morales, which is pretty neat. I don't know if this was a new game or if this is a DLC expansion for Spider-Man. I'm guessing it's a whole new game for PS5. It did say 2020 on the release date, so I'm guessing it's coming out alongside the console. But it was a really short glimpse. The game looked cool. It looked like more Spider-Man, but obviously with a different character, so that's kind of neat. Maybe it's a retelling of the Spider-Man game that came out a couple of years ago, but with Miles instead of Peter Parker. The first parties kept going after that, so we saw Gran Turismo 7. We got our first look at that. It looked like it had a campaign and story type mode in it as well this time around, which I know it was lacking last time, so that was pretty cool. No release date on that one though. Then we moved on to Ratchet & Clank A Rift Apart, which was one of my predictions. It's kind of interesting. It means Insomniac are working on two launch titles for PS5 with Ratchet and with Spider-Man, which is pretty intense for Insomniac, but pretty cool. I would have to say this game looked really good. I am a pretty big Ratchet & Clank fan, and it had lots of references to old Ratchet & Clank games. It was rifts apart. They looked like they were going through these like time rifts or portals, and getting transported to different points in time. They started off in Ratchet & Clank, I think it was like one of the future a planet from the future series of games. Then they went to Metropolis at some point, and they kind of just got teleported between a ton of different Ratchet & Clank games, and it looked really cool. That, to be honest, after seeing that and seeing how good that looked, I was kind of convinced a little bit more. And then that ended with a weird tease towards some female blue furry version of Ratchet, who kind of looked a little bit Sly Cooper-y. So I don't know what that was about. That was kind of off-putting, but the actual trailer for the game looked pretty awesome. We got a tease for a Square Enix game called Project Alita. That was just like a really short gameplay cinematic tease. Looks like an action RPG game of some sort. There was obviously doesn't even have a title yet. They didn't have a date in there. They didn't really show too much gameplay, which means that's probably not too far along. There was a game called Stray where you're playing as a cat, wandering through the streets. That had like a 2021 release date on it. Again, they didn't show a ton for that one. There was a few of them in here where they didn't show a ton of gameplay. They just showed these cinematic pieces, which they're great, but it doesn't really give you a decent indication of what the game actually is. I know it's like around toning, and it's essentially a marketing tactic, but without like a firm date and a decent gameplay trailer, it's really hard to be like, oh yeah, that's what this is and it's coming. Whereas the first three Sony games, Spider-Man, GT, and Ratchet & Clank, all had gameplay and stuff included in them, indicating that they're obviously a lot closer than some of these other titles. After that, we saw a Housemarque game called Returnal, which looks way different to any other Housemarque game I've ever seen. obviously more narrative driven than other Housemarque games. Interesting that they've leaned down that avenue when they used to be kind of like arcade type, studio making arcadey games. So I don't know what that's about. No date on that. We saw another Little Big Planet game called Sackboy: A Big Adventure. This was a bit of a surprise. Sackboy's been kind of dormant for a few years now, so yeah, and it looked different. It didn't look like just a 2D action platformer. It looked like a 3D, potentially like a 3D mascot platformer or a 3D isometric platformer. It wasn't 100% clear. It looked like it had co-op elements as well, but it did look like a bit of a departure from Little Big Planet. Probably in a good way. It probably needed something kind of new and fresh, and that was being made by Sumo Digital, who made LBP3. Man, I've got so many notes here, it's crazy. We saw a game called Destruction All-Stars. It was like a demolition derby type game, but then it had like people running and stuff as well. It was a weird trailer. Like, it was interspersed with gameplay and cinematics, but it was done in a way that, I don't know, it just felt weird. I don't know what that was about. It's just one of those games that like they dump into these conferences and you kind of never hear about again. I'm sure it was cool. It looked like it was taking some vibes from like Rocket League and a little bit kind of like Wipeout as well in terms of like tone, but there was no like clear vision on what the heck that thing was. Like, I don't know if it was a third person game or a racing game or a demolition game, but you can also get out of your car. I don't know. Let's get past that. They showed a game called Kena. I don't actually write any notes down about this one. So, like, it was a third-person action game, I suppose. I don't know who the developer of that one was or anything like that. It seemed, I didn't get a strong vibe from it, but we got a trailer for Goodbye Volcano High, which was the weirdest one. It was like a really strong anime vibe, and it had these animals, humans, but they were animals. I don't know. It kind of it was probably the most disturbing thing in the whole thing. Actually, no, there was another thing that was disturbing as well, but it was kind of weird. It felt, I don't know. The humanized animals, it's a strange one. It's a really strange one. I'm sure the game's going to be interesting. We got Oddworld, or new Oddworld game, I should say, which looked kind of cool. It looked like focused on narrative, but then also the same kind of like survival Oddworld gameplay from the PS1. I was really surprised about that. I wasn't expecting a new Oddworld game. Although, now that I think about it, I do kind of remember them saying they were working on a new game, but they've probably just been dormant for so long that, you don't really think about it. Oh, we got our first gameplay for Ghostwire by Tango Works. That's a Bethesda studio. They showed it off a year or so ago at E3 during a Bethesda conference, and people were really pumped for it. I remember them being super excited for it. I was underwhelmed back then because they didn't show any gameplay. They just showed this like really polished cinematic, whereas this time they showed gameplay. I don't think it was what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting like a first-person supernatural game. I think I was expecting more like of a mystery horror third-person game. So it was definitely a different vibe to what I took from it. It felt a little bit like Skyrim in terms of mechanics with like some of the hand movements and things, and it had like quite fast-paced supernatural kind of vibes and gameplay to it. So interesting for sure. I don't know if it's like the kind of thing that I'd be into, but definitely interesting. Didn't have a date on it though. We got a trailer for Godfall, and that was like a weird one. Godfall looks pretty good. The trailer was really weirdly cut together though. It was kind of, I don't know, the soundtrack was kind of weird, and the text that was popping up was kind of weird. All the text had like money behind it and gold and stuff, and like, I don't know, the tone of the game versus the tone of the trailer felt very, very different. Reminds me a little bit of how like the Suicide Squad trailer was, and how like the Justice League trailer was from DC for those movies versus the actual film. I don't know what they're up to with that one. It's a Gearbox published game, so maybe they're just doing some weird stuff with the trailer and the marketing for that game, and it doesn't quite gel with the actual title. I don't know what the game is yet. We haven't seen a ton of it, but it just felt odd. The tone didn't feel quite right. Hitman 3 was also shown. This is the third game in their trilogy. I guess it concludes that trilogy of Hitman games that have been releasing on the previous gen of consoles. The game looked decent. It was all cinematics. There was no gameplay shown, but we all know what Hitman looks like anyway. So kind of cool to see that. I know a lot of people are really into it, and it was free really recently as well, so I'm sure more people have played it as well. We got a trailer for Astro's Playground, which looked kind of cool. Everyone probably remembers Astrobot on the PlayStation VR, and this appears to be a kind of, I guess, a PS5 version of that. Probably similar to what Playroom was on PS4 and VR when that launched, with like all the new features and stuff like that. So kind of cool they're doing that. Hopefully it's free again, like Playroom was too. We got a trailer for Little Devil Inside. That was, again, a strange trailer. I felt like it took a lot of vibes from other action games. Like it felt like it had a little bit of Journey in there. It felt like a bit of Uncharted, a little bit of Death Stranding with like some of the traversal, and even a little bit of like Bloodborne or Monster Hunter. I actually thought this was like a parody of all of the Sony first party games at first, like the way it was cut together. I was like, oh, is this something like made in Dreams, or is this showing off Dreams? Because of just how it looked like it was parodying first party titles. But then the text and everything came up, and it appears to just be a game. The trailer was also really long compared to some of these other trailers. No idea why or what the reason for that was, but yeah, it's another interesting one. It didn't look like a big like AAA title. We got a trailer for NBA 2K21, but it was just a cinematic trailer again. It's NBA, we know what that's going to look like. Okay, the weirdest trailer of the whole thing was Bug Snacks. This is a game made by the developers of Octodad. They were eating like these bug fruit food things, and then their arms were turning into fruit. I feel like it's probably going to be the game that gets the most memes made about it, and maybe that's the point. I don't know. It was a really weird one. By that point, I was just like, okay, guys, I think it's time to wrap this thing up. Then we finished on a high with like a whole bunch of bigger titles. We got a trailer for Demon Souls coming to PS5, which was cool. Developed by Bluepoint and by Japan Studios, which was awesome. It's great that we're going to see that. I guess the rumors about Bloodborne weren't true, and Demon Souls was true. I mean, Demon Souls has been rumored for a really long time, but that's the problem. It's been rumored for such a long time, like, we don't know. Now, obviously, we know it's real. And we got a trailer for Deathloop, which again was a Bethesda game shown off, I think, a year or two ago. We got gameplay this time, though, which is cool. The game looked awesome. It had a really cool, like, 80s vibe to it. It had an awesome, like, noir soundtrack. So definitely into that. I think it had probably one of the most stylish trailers of the entire conference. It had, like, an awkward lead into it where the developer was, like, talking. And, I don't know. It feels uncomfortable, but the actual trailer was very well put together. Finally got a trailer for Resident Evil The Village, which is like the worst kept secret at this point. It's leaked so many times, including that logo, which is leaked on a number of occasions. I liked how it came up with Village and then obviously went to change to 8. The trailer itself, I don't know about. I might make a separate video about Resident Evil because I love Resident Evil and I probably have too much to say about it to say in this video. The abridged version, though, they showed a lot of stuff, and they showed a lot of nostalgic stuff in there as well. I think, yeah, I think I'll do a separate video talking about it. I'm intrigued by it. I just feel like they showed off probably a little bit more than I would have wanted them to. I think they showed a lot of different enemy types and a lot of weirdness. When they teased Resident Evil 7, for example, they showed off like the creepy house and the family, and they kind of left it at that. Whereas this here, they showed monsters, they showed like cult type stuff, they showed village stuff, they showed a werewolf, they showed Chris Redfield. Like they showed a ton of stuff, and I was kind of just like, stop showing me things. Anyway, that game's not coming out this year. Capcom then had a trailer for a game called Pragmata, and it was like a astronaut guy in Times Square and then gets transported to the moon. There was no gameplay or anything, it was just all cinematic tone. No idea what that was. It looks like a weird Japanese developed game though, based on just the animation style alone when you saw it. So who knows what that's going to end up being. Some sort of action RPG, not RPG, some sort of action adventure game, I assume. And then finally we finished the conference on Horizon Forbidden West. It's our sequel to Horizon, which was one of the predictions. I guess like it wasn't really too difficult to predict that there would be a Horizon game coming, given what Guerrilla has or hasn't been working on for the last, wee while. They haven't released a game since Horizon. It was obviously popular. They were obviously going to continue it. So we saw that as well. So I guess that means, potentially our launch lineup is Horizon Forbidden West, Ratchet & Clank, Spider-Man, Gran Turismo, which is a pretty decent launch lineup, I would have to say. Not completely, off the charts of what I guess people were thinking and what people are expecting. I saw a lot of comments about people predicting some of these titles, so I guess it kind of fits in line with that. I was really surprised not to see Call of Duty in there to start with. I think that was bizarre. I have no idea where the Call of Duty announcement is now. My assumption is it's with Microsoft at this point because it hasn't been announced independently by Activision and it wasn't announced in this conference. So I'm guessing it's going to be sitting with Microsoft somewhere, which is kind of weird. We also didn't see Crash Bandicoot, which I thought might happen because Sony and Crash kind of have this lineage together. Crash was like teased at the very beginning of the conference in the montage, but he wasn't. There wasn't a new Crash game, which we've heard about for a long time. So I don't know where that is either. Maybe Activision has their own announcements or set of announcements coming at a later date, and maybe they're holding those things. But it did feel weird that those two things were absent. There was no Fortnite. I guess that was kind of replaced with Grand Theft Auto, which probably makes sense. I was also speculating Minecraft, but given that's a Microsoft IP, that obviously wasn't going to be featured. What else did I say? I mentioned Ratchet, Horizon, I mentioned Resident Evil, and what was the other prediction I had? Oh, the other one was Bloodborne. Yeah, there was no Bloodborne. I guess, I don't know. It's a weird thing, like showing off remasters in a thing like this. But yeah, no Bloodborne on PS5, unfortunately, which is kind of disappointing, but also like Demon's Souls is a full remake. It probably is a better fit. Overall, I think it was good. I don't think it was like amazing. These things are always so much more exciting before they happen because you're like so hyped and excited for it and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. In the reality though, like everything that was announced was probably on par with what I was expecting. There was nothing there that was like super disappointing or super exciting. It was just probably level with what I'm expecting. I'm feeling a little bit flat now, but that's not because it was bad. It's just because it's happened and you kind of know. When the secret is out, it's sort of just like, okay. It's the same with horror movies. They stop becoming scary as soon as you see the monster because you're kind of not afraid of the mystery of the monster anymore. So that's kind of it. But that's sort of a full rundown of the entire thing. I think I'll do a separate couple of videos about the announcements made, maybe about some of the titles, and I'm definitely going to do a separate video about Resident Evil, sort of breaking that trailer down a little bit more because I think there's more to say about that, and because that's probably the thing I'm most interested in, I feel like that's probably where I'm going to lean towards. Yeah, interesting conference. Oh, and we saw the console, obviously, which was cool. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that. That's going to be an interesting one. I feel like it's a love you, hate you kind of thing, and people are going to be very much divided. It's a very non-traditional looking console, I would say. It's taken a departure. They also announced a disc and discless version, which was interesting as well. Interesting tactic for sure on Sony's part. So yeah. But that's the entire conference. I'm curious to see what you guys think. I'd really like to have a discussion about this in the comment section. So give me your thoughts and impressions from the entire event. Let me know what you thought of it. Let me know what you think of the console. What games were you excited for? What were you looking forward to that wasn't announced? Or were you overwhelmed, underwhelmed? Let me know. And yeah, I'm gonna get to editing this video so I can get it up as soon as possible. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing down below. Otherwise, I am going to get another coffee so I can get through editing this video and getting it up on the channel. Have a great day, everybody.